Welcome to the Creative Warriors Podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. Well, we are welcoming Angie I can't say your name. It must be not enough coffee this morning. McMonigal. And I said it like 100 times yesterday, so I wouldn't mess up today. We are welcoming Angie McMonigal back with us today, and she's going to share with us some interesting perspective on being mindful, being balanced, how to slow down, and time management. So first question I have for you today, Angie, welcome back, is
Thank you.
As what I consider to be a creative warrior, which I believe you are, I would like you to give us some insight into your strategies or tip in prioritizing your creative vision or your voice when you're working with a client or a collaborator. So how do you keep your voice, but yet they have a different vision? That's kind of set the conversation.
I think this probably applies more to my commercial work. With the more abstract stuff, it doesn't really happen. They're usually hiring me very specifically for that, and I rarely get much direction. They're like, just go shoot how you shoot. So it's nice. It's nice to have people have faith in you like that. So that part doesn't really happen. The collaboration, the vision thing, usually comes more with commercial clients, like when I'm shooting for the architect or the developer. So that often starts with a conversation with them about their project. You know, what inspired it, what they most like about what they designed, what they maybe don't love that they had to do because their client wanted it. You know, there's always compromises when you're working with a client. Someone's paying you to create something for them. In my case, it's images of their finalized building or project. In their cases, it's the building they're building for whoever their client may be. So there's always compromises. So knowing what they like and what they don't like about a project, knowing what types of shots they like what look do you like, you know, clean or moody? Do you like the details, or do you want just the wider shots that show the whole thing? Like understanding how they want the images to feel and flow is a place that, you know, I need to understand for me to kind of work with their vision of all the work that they've done and the way that I shoot. More this year, this is the first year where I've started having architecture firms and clients reach out to me because they see more of that detailed abstract work and they feel like their project can benefit from seeing it in that way. So it's really nice to start having firms want to hire me for something that I've been working on for years and that is like very much my way of seeing and my approach. Like, look, I do the wider shots and everything like that. And I think I'm still learning my way in terms of my specific style in approaching those wider, more contextual shots versus those more detailed and abstract things. I feel pretty solid in that way of shooting and that way of seeing. Whereas the other things is a little bit of a learning curve. So I definitely am more open to embracing their ideas and their suggestions. I'm going to assume as I do this longer, I'm going to have a much more direct or clear idea of how to do those things or how to approach something more specifically from the way that I feel like makes sense. And not that I would ever disregard what they say. They built it. They have a way that they want to see something. In my case, when that happens, and I'm like, maybe that angle's not great, I will still shoot the way that they see it, but then I will also take the time to shoot it the way that I feel like is another perspective that maybe they didn't consider. I think it's a give and a take. I think with any relationship, you know, you have to take their thoughts and their viewpoint into consideration and work that into your workflow. And hopefully I'm working with people who are willing to give me a little bit of freedom in terms of maybe shooting something in a way that is slightly different than they had conceived. Who knows which is better? You know, sometimes you just have to try something to see if it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does. So I think it's great when you can have clients that are willing to collaborate with you as opposed to just dictate what you shoot and vice versa. I know some people work with photographers that are like, no, this is the shot. We're not doing that. And personally, I think that's a little egocentric and like selfish. You are shooting for somebody else. It is their work. You can have your vision and that's great, but I think you need to kind of collaborate and maybe give each other the free, like try both ways. There's nothing, no harm in that.
I've been in the architectural world for 30 years now. So I've been on the other side. So working with the architects and the engineers and designing buildings. So it's interesting. I picked up on something that you were saying that I think is critical. And you were talking about communicating, but finding out what motivated them. So you're finding out their heart and their motive and what they really like about their design, and even the compromises that we do have to make. Trust me, many times. Yeah. In fact, sometimes you don't even want to put your name on that building because of client changes.
That.
But yeah. But you're really trying to communicate with them on a deeper level before you even start. I think that's a really valid, very important piece to producing really meaningful work. Because you're not just saying, okay, here's a building, I'm going to shoot it. You're saying to the architect or the engineer or whatever, or the developer, what are you wanting? Where's your heart going with, you're not saying those words necessarily, but in your questions, that's really what you're seeking, is to understand them.
Yeah,
it's
what story are you trying to tell? Like, what is this? What do you want the space to feel like? To people when they're in it and experiencing it, what are you trying to convey to the public or to the people that will be living here? What is the space like? What's the vibe? What's the energy? What do you want it to feel like,
And when you work with architects,
you want to try to tell a story.
Yeah. And there's usually a story behind a good architect's design that you may never know. So I think it's neat you actually dig that deep, because there's all kinds of pre-stories that get developed before a development gets actually put on paper. So that's neat that you dig there. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so when you talk about mindset or how you're thinking through a project, we talked about, you're collaborating, you're working with clients, and then you have your own abstract work. How do you strive to remain open and curious in your work, but also not be able to have a creative output? I don't know if that question made any sense, but.
You mean with the clients or when I'm like...
This is more about what's in your mind. How do you keep your mind creative and passionate and like shut the voices? And
when I'm shooting for myself, I find that a lot of times my abstract work lately is on workshops, just because I've gotten so busy with the commercial work, that shooting on my own has become harder. But in all honesty, I think the best work comes when you're alone. And that's going to go against me trying to get people to sign up for workshops. But I think both have benefits. Like the collaboration or being around other creative people is helpful because you see different viewpoints. Like when I do my workshops and we do image reviews at the end, we've all been at the same places for 3 or 4 days. And yet the perspectives on the same building from the 10 different people in the workshops can be widely different. And I think it can be very eye-opening in terms of being able to be like, oh my God, I was right next to you and I didn't see that. Like just how we all interpret a space is so different. And this is more from like the abstract perspective. But in all honesty, I think some of my best work comes when I'm completely alone. And I'm free from distraction, where I can get kind of lost in the project, where I'm not teaching someone something. I'm not shooting alongside a friend, where I just like go and I get lost and I lose sense of what's around me. And I know that sounds awful and unsafe and whatever, but those are some of the best moments. Like think even outside of photography, isn't it the best when your mind is completely free of everything else except the very thing you're doing in that moment. It's great. And I think that so infrequently happens, but I think that's when like the best work comes, because you're just in it. You're like feeling the energy of the space, and you're kind of getting lost in, what you're seeing and how that feels and all of those things. So that's where I get the best, like, I think, work done. Not to say that I don't get other good stuff, like when I'm shooting alongside other people. It's just, it feels different because you can't get lost in something when you're paying attention to someone else, like with you, and having to teach them, or having, just be like, oh, are they bored here and I need to leave? Like if you're with your family and you're taking pictures or something like that, you're too worried about other people.
Okay, odd question. Have you ever gone on a workshop as an attendee versus leading them?
I have. It's been years. Yeah, I have. I did like a long exposure architecture photography workshop many years ago. And then I've tagged along, like in the conferences I teach, like I'll tag along on other people's walks where I'm not instructing. So I like seeing how other people teach, and how they see things, even if it's like a completely different genre. Like I've taken photo classes. Like I took a street photography photo class, just because I'm like, I'm going to try it. And I know I'm never going to do it on my own. Like I need someone to like force me to go like make the work, because it freaks me out. Like it makes me really uncomfortable. So it's like pushing myself to try things that I know I probably am not going to like, but maybe, like, you never know.
You
like,
never know. Yeah, exactly.
Because you just don't know. Or even if you end up, realizing you don't like it like you thought, you might still take pieces of that into the way that you already work. So yeah, I mean, I should probably do it more often. But I haven't in a long, it's been a while, since I've done that. I mean, although at the conference that I met you at, Valerie Jardin and I, like, we taught together. So seeing, like, it's interesting to co-teach with someone who has such a different, like, she's a street photographer. So it's different, so it's interesting to see how she approaches a space versus how I come onto a space. So, it's, yeah, I think it's beneficial to keep trying to learn from other people, even if you already have your way of doing things. It's ever evolving,
Yeah. It is, and that's one of the good things about it. Upgrade your experience with our premium subscription. Enjoy exclusive features, enhanced content, and seamless extended interviews. Elevate your enjoyment and personal growth with our premium subscription today. If you enjoy the Creative Warrior podcast, the female heart and soul of photography, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you. When you're in the city, a lot of your work is in cities. How do you, because you talked about getting lost in the space, and I know for a lot of us, there's a lot of fear around that. I come from a very rural area. So when I get in a city, I recognize that I don't have street smarts. So I'm very, very cautious. So how do you stay focused? Of course, experience will help with this, but, and then allow yourself to get kind of in the zone, if you want to call it that, to really get the shots that in your mind there and in your heart that are working, but not put yourself in any danger at the same time? I mean, how do you personally balance that out?
I mean, for the most part, like, where I'm shooting is not an unsafe area. Like, look, you always have to be somewhat aware of your surroundings, but not leaving your backpack sitting somewhere with a bunch of gear in it, like having your stuff on you at all times. And maybe it's naive of me. It's just not something I think about a lot. In all honesty, I really do believe that if you look confident, if you look like unafraid, it goes a long way. I think if you're in a city and you look timid and afraid, you're a target. I think if you look like you own it and you know what you're doing, like, I will go to a brand new city and pretend I know where I'm going. Like I was in Mexico City for a week earlier this year by myself, walking around with 2 cameras on my body at the whole time, and a backpack with more gear in it. I never once felt unsafe, but I also acted like I knew where I was going at all times, even though I sometimes did it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that
yes,
happens
I do
in New
know what you
York,
mean.
that happens in Chicago. I really think like coming across secure and confident and like, you know what you're doing makes you less of a target. I think the second you get timid and shy and like, you know, look afraid, I think you become more of a target.
They can
But I
smell the
mean,
fear.
yeah, and it's not like I'm shooting in bad neighborhoods, you know, like the stuff that I'm photographing is generally in well populated, safer neighborhoods and urban environments. I mean, you were with me in Chicago. None of the areas that we went are unsafe. And look, anything can happen anywhere. You can have bad things happen in like amazing neighborhoods. It happens all the time. But I don't know. I just try not to worry too much about it. At the same time, if something were to happen, it's gear, it's insured. Like, as long as I'm not attacked personally. But I mean, I've been shooting for 22 years and I've never once had anything happen, ever. And, you know, maybe I shouldn't say that. Like, you know, it's jinxing me. But, you know, at the same time, it's quite honestly not something I think about very often. And that may be naive and unintelligent, but
No,
it's worked out so far.
I think, you know, from my experience with people who have grown up in cities and are in cities a lot, that is exactly what you have to have, is that don't mess with me, you know, or I've got this persona, so that the world around you doesn't even notice you for the most part, because you just fit in with all the other confident people. When you're kind of like doing all the odd things, that's when you get noticed. And that's so
Yeah.
I get that. So what about balance? You've been raising a family. You've obviously had personal challenges. How do you balance your family's needs and then the busy photography career? What are some of the techniques you've used or lessons you've learned through the years that you would be willing to share?
I guess the main lesson is balance doesn't exist. I really, truly don't think it does. I think you have seasons of the year that are, you know, much more about your family, and there are seasons that are much more about your work. And I think you'll drive yourself crazy trying to be everything to everyone all at the same time. I really think it's impossible. And I think you have to make peace with the fact that sometimes you're like, guess it's McDonald's again for dinner, kids. Like, mom's not cooking. And I mean, you have to let certain things go. I don't like to cook. I rarely cook. Like there's a lot of takeout. And sometimes I feel like a bad mom for that, but it's also, you have to learn where it's okay to let some things go and not control it, because other things are more important, like hanging out, watching a movie with my kids, or going on vacation with them, or, you know, doing a shoot that I really want to do, like working with a client I really want to work with. These things are more important to me than some other things in life. And I think it's a matter of, what are you willing to let go of to try to place the emphasis on the things that like truly matter to you? And, you know, look, I'm not always successful in either realm. You know, sometimes I'm not able to work as much as I want, or put the kind of energy I want into that, or I get to the point where blog post is good enough. Like I want it to be better, but I just like don't have the time to perfect it to the level that I want it to. But putting something out is better than nothing. And with my kids, you know, sometimes it's like, I wish I could be at every lacrosse game and every soccer game, but the reality is I can't. So I'm at a lot of them. I'm at most of them, but I'm not at every single one. And that's okay. So it's learning to be okay with not being everything all the time, I guess. I don't think there's balance. I don't think it exists. And
I always say that as soon as you figure it out, something shifts. It's just never ending.
I mean, truly.
It's like a plate that's constantly being tipped, you know, okay, well, I finally got it. Oh, shoot. Here we go again.
Yeah. 100%.
So having worked with you for a very short period of time, one of the things I detected and I really valued was your attention to detail, down to a level that just took me to a different place. How that in its, you could call it perfectionism, you could call it beautiful, wonderful work at the end, but sometimes that perfectionism can get in our way, and prevent us from ever, like you were talking about your email, from ever releasing anything because it's not perfect. So how do you inside yourself cope with that self-talk?
I've probably gotten better with this over the years. I think it's kind of just a growth thing where the things that you notice maybe in a photo, nobody else is going to see, except for the most extreme critic. There are people, the pixel peepers out there, the people that are like extremely critical, but 99% of the population isn't going to notice those things that you consider flaws. So I think you have to do the best that you can with the time that you have. And, sometimes for me, that means I edit fewer photos of something than I want to. And this is talking like personal work. Or, like, I guess, I probably shoot less than I used to, which personally, like by myself and for myself. So as much as I don't like that, I've tried to come to terms with, I still get to create work when I'm on my workshops, even though I'd like to do more, and you have to, like, that goes back to the balance thing. You have to figure out, like, how do I make this work to some degree? Like, I can't be all of it all the time. Like, I can't go out every day and shoot something for myself, like for a personal project. There just is not time. So I kind of come to accept the fact that, like, in that regard, I just do like intensive, like those weekend workshops that are 3 or 4 days long and you're shooting for 10 hours a day. It's like, okay, here's like a whole lot of work that I create in a very short amount of time, as opposed to a little bit of work that's spread out over the year. And it's maybe not the way I prefer. Like, I would love to just be able to do it more slowly. But right now, given that this is a business and that I need to make money and that I'm shooting for clients commercially, there's a give and take, and you have to like figure out when you can do those things. Like, my winters are pretty slow commercially. I'm in Chicago. It's cold. Like, there aren't as many photo shoots. I hate the cold. Like, I don't really like going out in the cold, but like, those are my chances to go do things personally. But then sometimes I'm like, I need a break. Like, I've been crazy busy for 9 months. Like, I need a breather. So I guess being kind to yourself and being like, it's okay, like, to not do it all the time. And, that's that perfectionism mentality. And you want to be everything all the time, and you want it to be perfect, and you want it, to keep improving. But I think even doing just a little bit is better than nothing, and finding adjustments in the way that you work, and accepting that it has to change for you to keep growing. Like, you can't always do it the same way all the time. It would also get boring,
Yeah,
it keeps it fresh, and being around other creatives and other people is nice sometimes. But when I feel like I need the time by myself, I will go shoot one building and I'll make just a few shots where I'm not drowning in hundreds of edits and feel overwhelmed. You know,
I have noticed that the longer people photograph, the less they come home with. Not always, but I might come home with 1,000 photographs, whereas you might do the same thing but come home with 150. But your 150 has a lot more thought than my 1,000, because of your experience, because you know what you're looking for, you know what you're trying to get, and you know that you don't want to deal with 1,000 photographs.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think, you're completely right. I think when you're newer to photography, you shoot, and you're shooting everything because everything's new and everything's fresh and everything's exciting. And the longer you do it, especially if it's like locations you've been to, you're like, well, I've already done that, or I know that's not going to work, so I'm not going to make the shot. Like, what's the point of something I'm just going to toss away anyway? Yeah, you just get a little more, I don't know, picky or selective in what you're doing. And yeah, I mean, it's not the shoot. Like I could shoot every day. It's the like, oh God, now I have all these photos to edit. It's like the editing that is the harder or like less enjoyable part for me. The creating, shooting. And so sometimes, honestly, I'm just like, I'm going to shoot with my phone because it's done there. It's a quick edit. Like I'm not taking my phone shots into Lightroom and Photoshop and messing around with them. I'm like, you're still creating something, even if it's not necessarily work that you're going to put on your website or try to sell or do things with. It's still keeping you in the creative loop. It's still forcing you to look and to see, even if it's not, something you're going to use later for monetary gain, but it's there for creative gain, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So let's close out this episode with just a little reminder of what's coming up next. We're going to talk a little bit deeper about some of the inside wars that we might have dealing with doubt, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. How do we handle rejection when we get creatively blocked? Some of those things. So we'll come back again with those subjects. See you in a little bit.
Hi, Angie McMonigal here. If you'd like to learn more about teaching opportunities with me, you can check out my website. There's a free ebook you can download that goes over some of the composition and ways to photograph. It'll also get you signed up for the newsletter. So if you're ever interested in workshops, you'll be the first to know and get those discount codes for workshops. I also have some webinars I've done in the past that are available on the website, and I am available for private mentoring or photo walks. So just send me an email and we can get it figured out.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Creative Warriors. We want to thank Angie McMonigal for sharing her heart and her soul with us. We hope you enjoyed our fun conversation and gained some valuable takeaways. In our next episode, get ready to learn more with Angie. Remember to subscribe or follow The Creative Warriors on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at arielfaithphotography.com. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. Stay curious and have a happy artistic journey. Thank you for listening to the Creative Warriors podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. See you next episode.